Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is a mysterious and remote wilderness ranch by the wonderful mind of VatoCabron. As ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story, entitled My wife and I bought a ranch in the mountains last year, and my neighbour had some interesting suggestions on how to manage our new land. Part 1. Let's get straight into that. My wife Sasha and I have owned a small ranch since last spring, and so we've now experienced all 4 seasons here. And what follows is the story about why this place is special. Sasha and I moved to a rural Idaho about a year ago when I got what is essentially my dream job working for the county here. We found a shitty little rental in town where the county seat is, a bustling metropolis of just about 3,500 people. The entire county has around 13,000 year-round residents. At first, we weren't really sure how long we'd stay. It's definitely the smallest community we'd ever lived in, and certainly a bit more blue-collar and conservative than what we were used to. But over time, we really fell in love with the place. We both love to hike, camp and ski, and I'm an avid hunter and angler, and so being surrounded by beautiful mountains, canyons, forests and trout-filled rivers to explore certainly helped us to get comfy here. Sasha also had a great job that allowed her to work remotely, minus a day trip to her firm in Jackson a couple of times a month, which actually provided us with a nice reprieve from the isolation of a small mountain town. We don't have kids, just our dog Dash, and we're both in our early mid-30s, and we both had solid incomes for the first time, and so we started thinking about buying a property. The area was also developing rather quickly amongst the wealthy hobby ranch demographic as the billionaires pushed the millionaires out of Jackson Hole, and I qualified for a pretty amazing finance plan through the VA. That sweet mortgage, along with getting college paid for, are the only pleasant pieces of baggage I took home from the 6 years in the Marine Corps. And so we figured, screw it, let's look for some property to buy. Our realtor called us the morning our property got listed this last spring, and she knew we wanted to find a spot with 4 to 5 acres and was ecstatic about the price and said it was important we tour it right away and get an offer in. We met her at her office that afternoon, and on the drive out to the place she explained how it was a 40-acre ranch owned by a family trust based back in the east somewhere, and that no one had lived on the land in over a decade. I guess the old matriarch of the family died last year, so the trust had the house remodeled prior to selling it and all the other assets of the trust to split amongst the kids and adult grandkids. Long story short, the sellers were motivated and it would go fast. I'll never forget driving up the long driveway that leads from the county road to the house and seeing the property for the first time. Oh, it was breathtaking. It still is every time I make that turn. The house sits on a little hill surrounded by a meadow and aspen trees. And spring was in full talk and everything was tree fog green, wildflowers and birds everywhere. The land felt like it was just humming with vibrance. The house is much smaller than what we were looking for, only about 900 square feet, smaller than apartments we'd lived in after college. However, it did have a big house porch, a landscape fenced-in yard around the house with some big old cottonwood trees, a separate garage in a decent shape, a couple of storage sheds and a very old but functional hay barn with a few horse stalls. What stood out more than anything else is the fact that anywhere you looked, it was unbelievably beautiful. Landscape, without a doubt, is why we fell in love with it immediately. Outside a fenced-in yard, there were about 25 acres of meadow, with a pond and creek running in and out of it, and around 15 acres of pine forest that sit above the house, and our neighbour immediately to the east is a national forest, literally 3 times the size of Rhode Island. We both loved it, but Sasha was absolutely beside herself with excitement and adorably giddy. I don't have much family, and Sasha's my entire world. I got out of the Marines and moved straight into freshman dorms at a massive state university. As a maladjusted 24-year-old fresh off a combat deployment, would not advise Marines. I repeat, would not advise. It was a fucking nightmare of emotional isolation and volcanic social anxiety. I quickly fell into a violent, whiskey and blow-fueled spiral of self-destruction, the kind that can only be stymied by the falling in love. Meeting her brought me back, and I have no doubt Sasha's happiness is quite literally the only reason I am still alive. And I thought about that every day for the last decade. So, seeing her react to the property with that much excitement and happiness was all that I needed. The listing price was a bit above what we wanted to spend, but we kind of just decided to go for it. And with the VA loan plan and having convinced ourselves it was a sound investment, we were pretty much set. Besides, it was still cheaper than what our friends were spending on houses in our expensive hometowns and cities we'd lived in since. Right? So, we said fuck it, let's do this, and we made an offer. I got an email from the realtor about 6:30 a.m. the next morning saying that accepted our lowball offer without any counter, and we were officially under contract. A few weeks later, we got the inspection and title report. No red flags, and so we closed the next Friday, moved in that same night, ate pasta off our camping stove, sitting on the camping chairs on the porch, and slept on a blow-up mattress in the living room. And Sasha and I were electric with excitement, and made one fantastic and entirely unrealistic plan after another for the property. I'm pretty sure that first day we committed to constructing ski jumps, a 10-challenge archery course, a tiny home village for guests, and several wine-drinking patios along the creek. The next 15 days of moving and settling in and planting our garden screamed by. And Dash, our hunting dog, was in absolute heaven. He'd never come inside if he didn't have to, and now he had a full acre of fenced-in yard, and with a kingdom beyond. I'll never forget the look of wonder, excitement, and just plain old peace Sasha wore every minute of those first few weeks here. At the beginning of our 3rd week in the place, we realized we were fast approaching the rudeness threshold of not going to introduce ourselves to the neighbors. And there were other houses in the area, but we only had one neighbor on our road. A 300-acre ranch to the north, owned by a couple we'd called Dan and Lucy, who our realtor said were real nice. We made a couple of pies, hopped in the truck, and went to introduce ourselves. And their driveway ran about a quarter mile past the gate, through their pastures pocketed with clusters of ponderosa and fat cows, and ended at their house. It was a nice place, looked lived in, stellar view of the mountains, good vibes. Gardens were well taken care of. The house was nestled between a couple of massive barns, a tractor garage, and a big workshop. As we approached the house, I saw an older-looking fella in the driveway turn to face us, and then raise a hand in greeting, and slowly he walked over. "Y'all must be the new neighbours," and Dan had a warm smile. "Yes, sir. I'm Harry, and this is Sasha." Dan looked in to be his early 70s, but still quite spry. He had a calculation and strength to his movements, suggesting he had as many good years left in him as someone in their 50s. His hands were like buffalo leather, and his features looked carved out of wood. An older woman came out of one of the barns right then and there as well. She looked around the same age and just as strong. She looked wise, like there wasn't much left behind door number 3 that couldn't surprise her. She introduced herself as Lucy. We introduced ourselves and exchanged the normal pleasantries. They told us how they'd owned their ranch since the early 1980s, and how their 3 kids were all living in the boys with families of their own. They also had told us how the family that built our place, only visited once or twice a year, mostly just to hunt, and how that family also owned a mansion in Jackson and other ranches in Montana, and so they were excited to have full-time neighbors. And they were very grateful for the pie, and we expressed our sincere, please call or stop by if you need anything at all, which they offered right back. Right as it felt like an appropriate till next time handshake moment, Dan pointed up at me with a little smirk and said, "Inventory?" "Is it that obvious?" I asked in response, looking down at myself. He slapped his knee and proclaimed, "I can spot it a mile away. Army or Marines?" "I was in the Marine Corps, sir. 0311. Dan responded with a grunt. "But wait, did you say was... I thought the only way out of the Corps was dead in a pine box." "If I had a nickel for every time I've heard that one." "Yeah, I guess once a Marine, always a Marine," and so it's said. But they told me you fine taxpayers would float the bill for my college tuition, and so I jumped ship and never ever looked back. Old folks always laugh at that line, and Dan and Lucy were included. "Haha, very good. I was in 101st, and did a stint in Nam in 70 and 71. I've heard that was one hell of a time, and one hell of a place to find yourself as a paratrooper, sir." "That it was, son, that it was. You make it over to Afghanistan or Iraq?" "I made a couple of cameos in Afghanistan." Dan responded with a grin, but it seemed forced, almost apologetic. "I've heard that one was one hell of a place to find yourself as a Marine." "It certainly was a colourful experience, sir." "I have no doubt." Dan's smile was replaced with an inquisitive look, suggesting a change in subject was coming. "Hey, you know, for the last 10 years the family who owned your land paid Luce and I and some of our seasonal ranch staff to take care of the place. Mostly just keeping the trees and shrubs in order, grazing down the grass before the fire season, checking on the well and septic tank now and again. And Lord knows I've spent lots of time over there the last decades, riding and hunting. We know that land as well as anyone alive. We'd really like to share a few things with you. A few pointers when it comes to managing that land that we think are very important. Maybe we can swing by soon and spend an hour or two walking around with you." And Sasha chimed in, as she often does, ever so promptly whenever I'm given an opening to put off non-essential social calls. "Oh, that would be hugely appreciated. We'd love to pick your brains about the land. Does tomorrow evening work?" And Sasha squeezed my arm. "Swell. Thanks, babe." "Yeah, tomorrow evening works great on my end. And Dan and Lucy, that work for you two?" "Sure," Lucy said. "We'll swing by around 5 or so. Thanks again for dropping by. I hope you two make a habit of it." And with that, we hopped back in the truck and headed on home. "Don't even start whining about me making that plan, babe. It seems so sweet. That knowledge will be hugely helpful, okay?" As usual, she was right. I know, you're right. I'll enjoy it. They seem like a solid neighbours." It's different for everyone, but interacting with other combat veterans is hit or miss for me. Sometimes I feel they're the only people in the world I can identify with, who understand me. Other times they're the only people in the world I never want to meet again. I can't really explain it. The next morning we woke up and decided the day would be best spent doing fencing work in the pastures. We wanted to get some sheep in the coming weeks to graze down the grass ahead of the fire season, and several lengths of pasture fencing needed some serious TLC. It was a great day, just us and the dog out on the land. One of those spring days where you can just smell how close the long days and warm nights of summer are. And that evening around 5 p.m. I saw Dan and Lucy coming up the driveway in their big old F-250, and so we went out to greet them. We walked around the property for an hour with Dash at our heels, as they talked all about the well pump, told us about the aquifer and nuances when irrigating at different times of the year, and recommended how to care for some of the fruit trees in the yard, and showed us where the elk usually mess up the fences, where they start to migrate down, and showed us where the best mushrooms grow, pointed out some trees they reckoned would die within the next year or two, and showed us where the creek floods in bad runoff years. That kind of shit. It struck me right away these two had spent a lot of time getting to know the land around here. It was impressive and humbling seeing folks with this much connection to the natural systems around them. I wanted that. We walked back up towards the house and Lucy asked Sasha if she would show her where some wild asparagus grows in the pasture, and said they'd be back soon. Lucy linked her arm through Sasha's, and I could see them laugh about something as they walked off. Probably one of the cutest things I'd ever witnessed. Dan asked if we could talk on the porch for a moment, and so I asked if he wanted a beer and grabbed a few before we sat down. And the first sip of that cold beer, really hit the spot. Dan took a long slug as well, and then placed his beer down and moved his chair to face me more directly. As he settled back in, he put his elbows on his knees, linked his fingers, leaned in and looked me right in the eye. I was a bit awkward, as he was staring down as though fishing for the right words, then looked up into my eyes with a fierce intensity. You know, son, one of the things we just went over will come in handy while managing this land over the years. There are a few other very important things I need to tell you about. A few things that are hard to explain, but you must pay damn close attention to. I cannot stress that enough. These things are important. Do you understand? I couldn't help but smirk, an anxious reaction I have in response to awkwardly timed sincerity, I guess. But I admired Dan, and so I put my beer down and met his gaze, nodded and said, Sure, Dan, I'm all ears. Okay, what I'm about to tell you will sound, strange, alright? Maybe even frightening, but you need to take me serious, son. You understand? What I'm about to tell you can, and likely will, save your life. You need to listen like I'm an NCO who's been in a country for a year, and you're a green-ass fresh boot who just stepped off the plane. I usually find military-themed analogies like that cheesy as hell, but I could almost taste how serious he was, and so I just nodded and held his gaze. I hear you, sir. Dan nodded, then pulled some folded papers out of his jacket, held them up in front of me before placing them on the side table between us. I've written down what I'm about to tell you, because you and Sasha need to memorize these things. It needs to be second nature, son. There are 3 copies here. Lucy's given a copy to Sasha right now, and going over the same things. Do not lose them, copy them, handwrite them. Carve them into a goddamn plank and hang it in your bedroom, whatever it takes. Now, no questions, until the end. He folded his hands again and then began. You need to understand that there is a spirit in this valley, and up in them mountains up there, alright? Some kind of spirit that cannot be explained. The Shoshone and Bannock Indians around these parts gave a name to it I never could remember, and so I just call it the spirit. Strange things happen around here, strange and dangerous. The spirit has strange powers with strange manifestations, and can be dangerous as hell, son. It can get ravenous and feral. This spirit is not one thing or entity, but it's what's behind or motivating the strange occurrences which you will, unfortunately, come to know. Dan's eyes then narrowed. But there are patterns in the way the spirit presents itself. It is not a spontaneous force. It does not act on a whim. It is fairly predictable. Its behavior or its methods are based on the seasons, almost like it has earthly rules to which it must adhere. But if you anger the spirit or cross it in some way, you will fiercely regret doing so for a very brief and terrifying remainder of your life. Do you understand me so far? I was kind of speechless, and definitely a bit creeped out. I was partly creeped out at what Dan was saying, but mostly creeped out by the fact that my cool, old mountain man neighbour, who seemed so grounded, was now rattling on about something like this. I sat forward and leaned out, trying to catch a glimpse of Sasha and Lucy, but they were out of view. And Dan sensed my anxiety and said, "They're fine, boy, sitting down there by the creek." I leaned forward and saw them sitting on a log in a meadow. "Lucy is going over the same stuff with Sasha. I need you to listen clear, all right?" I nodded. "Of course, Dan. I'll hear you out." "What I've written down on that paper is the ways in which the spirit will show itself to you. The ways the spirit will try to get to know you, try to trick you. And in response to each of those manifestations of the spirit, what you are to do in order to ward the spirit off, to keep you and your wife safe. I've learned some of these methods the hard way, but most I learned from the Shoshan elder I brought my land from. You may meet him eventually. He and his family still hunt and trap around here. Now listen close." Dan leaned in towards me. "Like I said, the spirit manifests itself in various ways, but it's seasonal. The way you experience it now, in the springtime, is different from how you experience it in the winter. So we're going to go by season, starting with spring, all right?" Sure." The spring is the easiest, as the spirit is not that active. And what you've got to do to ward it off is easy. There's only one way the spirit manifests itself, and it'll only happen once or twice, maybe 3 times a season at most. And we call it the light. It only happens between sunset and sunrise, and you'll see a ball of yellow light in your pond, or in one of the little eddies of the creek running through the meadow down there. Okay? It looks like a Christmas light. It's not that bright, but it's bright enough. You won't miss it or mistake it for a reflection. If you see that light, stop what you're doing and start a fire in the fireplace. You don't need to freak out, just make sure that you cease whatever is going on and focus on getting a fire started. Not a big fire, not like you're trying to heat the whole house, but start a little fire good enough to heat up some water. All right? Once the fire is going, the light will go away. If it doesn't, the fire's too small, and add another log. It will go away. Once it does go away, everything's fine. You can let the fire die out. You do not need to look for the lights every night, either. All right? You only need to make a fire if you see the light, naturally. As you're walking by a window or outside after dark and glance at the pond or creek. Luce and I brought some firewood for you, in case you don't have any. And remember to keep some for springtime. Don't burn it all in the winter. You understand? What in the sweet fuck, man? I mean, yeah, sure, Dan. I understand what you told me. Light at night. Start a small fire. 10-4. He looked at me for a solid 10 seconds, and I didn't break his gaze. I felt pretty strongly he was fucking with me, and would continue to engage him, but wasn't going to give him an inch more than I had to. All right, now, summertime. In the summertime, the way the spirit manifests can be horribly dangerous, so listen close. But before I get into it, I need to ask you something. Do you have a rifle? Several. What caliber? Dan asked. Well, I've got a couple of 22s, a couple of 5.56s, a 30-30, a 308, got a 30-06, a 7mm. I've also got... Dan put his hands up, nodded and cut me off. That's plenty. Any of those will do fine. Just make sure to have one near the front door at all times, and maybe another in the garage. And always bring one with you when you're working on the land. But as a Marine living out here in grizzly and wolf country, I trust you do that anyway. I nodded. All right. Or in the summertime, the way the spirit will present itself is through what we call the bear chase. It only happens between around 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. And it seems you have to be physically outside the house for this to happen. We've never seen it start while we were indoors. And when you're outside, you'll first hear a man hollering in a deep voice, unless you happen to be looking at the perfect spot. But when you look into the voice, you'll see a man, butt naked, naked as the day he was born, pegger out dangling around and everything. Come running for his life out of the trees, and with a big black bear chasing him. Or he'll be screaming for you to help him, begging for you to save his life. And listen carefully. Whatever you do, do not let that man get close to you. This fence around the house seems sufficient, based on what I've seen. He can't open gates or doors, or even climb over things more than 3 foot high. But no matter where he manifests, he'll be coming straight at you. So, if you can get inside the fence around the house, or behind one of the cattle fences in the pasture, or even behind a big log, you should be fine, as long as you can keep that distance. The bear will get him. However, I strongly recommend shooting this man. If you don't, the bear will get him anyway, and watching as this man gets eaten alive, as he's weeping and begging you to save him, and shitting all over himself, it's very unpleasant. Dan took a sip of his beer and went on. Do not worry about the bear. It's not a threat. So far as I can tell, it can't even make physical contact with you. The naked man is the dangerous one. Do not let him get near you or Sasha. Do you hear me? He will tear you apart. It's relatively simple. He's not that fast of a runner. Neither is the bear. It's like a light jogging speed. Just make sure that when you hear the yelling, locate the bear chase, get some structure between you and him, and shoot him. The bear will drag him off. Is that clear? I almost started laughing at this point, but it was so creative and Dan seemed so feverish with seriousness I, again, just nodded. That's all clear, sir. Now comes autumn. In my opinion, this one can be the most unpleasant. And we call this one the Scarecrow. It only comes around 2-3 times a season, but after dealing with it once, you'll think that's enough for a lifetime. It can only show up at night when you're sleeping, somewhere within 20 or 30 yards of the walls of your home. You'll wake up and find what is ultimately just a sort of scarecrow. It's a person-sized, burlap and canvas doll type thing, with a pretty realistic face stitched into the head, 5 or 6 feet tall, and with old-time pioneer clothing, sometimes a dress and a bonnet, sometimes overalls and a straw hat. It feels like it's full of wet straw. Things weigh probably 40 or 50 pounds. It'll be in a casual position, either sitting in the grass or sitting on a bench or stone wall, sitting on the steps of your porch, or leaning on a fence post, something like that. It's never hidden either. It's like it wants to be found as soon as you go outside. And there's no life in 'em when you walk up to 'em. You can poke it and it'll fall over, like it's just full of wet straw, but you gotta move 'em. See, they need to get burned. That's the only way. They need to get burned with fire. They ain't made of material like anything else. And once they're properly lit and burning, they'll burn fast. You ain't gotta coax the flames. They'll burn all the way down to the dust in 30 seconds, every time. Again, they ain't that heavy, but you gotta move 'em, because if you're within 20 yards of your home, when you light 'em on fire, well, they wake up. Try to get their burning bodies into your home. Burning your home down seems to be what they are dead set on. Seems to be their mission. So you gotta move 'em, and that's where it gets strange. They won't really fight you, but they kinda spasm out, start to make noises, but only while you're moving them to wherever you're going to burn them. Never while they're still. Between 5 and 15 seconds after you start to move the things, they'll wake up very briefly. It's quite startling. They'll grab your hand and or you'll try to stand up or try to undo the rope you got tied around them. I recommend moving them with rope to avoid direct contact. Some of them are strong, and sometimes they'll even take a swing at you. But those brief moments of life are only like spasms. They only last 2 or 3 seconds, and then they go limp again. Dan then leaned back in his chair. And there's one other thing. They're scared. I mean, they seem scared for their lives, like they know they're going to die. In those moments they wake up, they can talk too, and cry, weep more like. Again, it's a real brief moment, but they'll get a please don't or oh God out during those spasms as they try to break free. Ignore it. They absolutely must be burned by sunset on the same day you find them. I recommend getting a good lasso. When you find one, lasso it and drag it to your burnt spot. That way you don't have to see them writhing around as you're moving them or get too close to them. When you drop them in the burn spot, they go lifeless again. So it's pretty easy. And they're real flammable. All you gotta do is throw a big match at them and they'll cook easy. Now remember, they're only really dangerous if you try to burn them too close to the house. That's the only way they wake up and stay woken up. And you won't want to do that. Alright? I was chuckling openly at this point, but I was still creeped out by this one. Dan seemed uneasy talking about these things, and it was a bit contagious. I knew Sasha was going to be disturbed by this story, and Dan probed me again. Son, did you hear all of that? Yeah, sorry. Quite an interesting thing, Yeah. I rubbed my eyes. This was getting so strange and my head was starting to hurt. These things can get a bit jumpy. Burn them away from the house. And Dan nodded. That's right. Dan grabbed his beer and dragged the rest of it in one long pull. I opened another. Dan took a deep breath and looked out over the land. Now, there's winter. The last one. He looked over at me with a fierce determination in his eyes, like he was either gonna stab me or kiss me. And for most people, the winter spirit manifestation is the easiest. That is to say, for most people. There is no winter manifestation of the spirit, but for you, I believe there will be. We call it the ghosts. The frequency of this one is unpredictable, but usually only comes around once a winter. Matter of fact, we've had a handful of winters go by when it never actually happened at all, and only once has it happened twice in one season. Dan pulled his bandana out and wiped his forehead, then looked up at the mountains to the east. He seemed really on edge. He then turned his gaze on me. I gotta ask you something personal, son. Is that alright? I was surprised someone could pause a recitation of pure, fantastical nonsense to engage in such a common courtesy. Sure, Dan. Go right ahead. Have you ever killed someone? I mean directly caused another death. Calling in air support that results in someone's death doesn't count. Yes, I have. Have you killed more than one person? Yes. Were they all in Afghanistan? Yes. I was getting impatient. If this cocky old bastard wanted to trade war stories, all he had to do was ask. This fairy tale bullshit seemed a ridiculous length to go to pry for morbid answers to morbid questions. How many people have you killed? Well, I know for sure I killed 4 men. 4 I shot and watched die. But I don't know the total for sure. There were a handful of others I could have killed. I trust you know what I mean. And Dan nodded. Some guy takes a pot shot at our patrol from a ridge above us. A dozen of us light up his position. We find him dead. Not saying who actually killed him, or you think he hit someone and they fall and get up and run off. Could have just nicked him. Or he could have gotten gut shot and bled out in a poppy field. No saying for sure. That kind of shit just happens. I ain't shy about this stuff, Dan, but is there some particular damn reason that you're asking? And Dan replied, Well, it's 4. You're lucky. I thought I'd killed 8 people in Vietnam till my first winter here. Turns out I'd killed 12. What in the fuck is he about to get into now? I thought, and he went on. You see, the way the spirit manifests itself in the winter is through people you've killed. They'll show up here on your land, together. It's like the spirit finds them somewhere and lets them know the one who put them in the dirt is in a place where they can be reached. Lucy can't see them when they show up for me, and Sasha won't be able to see them either, but they can feel them. Understand? Sometimes Lucy can't even hear them. Dogs can feel them around too. Here's what happens. One day, you'll walk out and look around your land and you'll see a group of men somewhere on your property. Maybe up there along the tree line, or maybe milling around down by the pond. It takes them a few days to work up the gumption to get close to you. They even seem frightened of you at first, but eventually they'll get the sound to get closer. After a few days, they'll get real comfortable around you, and they'll be waiting for you at the front door and walk you to your truck. They'll be outside the bathroom window waiting for you to take your morning piss. You lay down to go bed, they'll be outside the bedroom screaming all night long. And they're on you like stink on shit. However, it also seems they maintain some of their early personalities. For instance, I killed one NVA soldier early on in my deployment in 1970. I shot him through the spine and paralyzed him. After he collapsed in the mud, I went up to him and gave him some water and lit him a cigarette. I held his hand as he died. Dan had a tear rolling down his cheek. Christ almighty, I thought, this guy is an open book. He respects me, I guess. He does his own thing when they all show up, hangs back, smiles and nods at me, and even offer an apologetic shrug when the others get all worked up and start hooting and hollering at me. A couple of years back, I'm pretty sure I even chased off a pack of wolves that had been hanging around my ranch, when we had a few early February lambs. Strange as it may sound, he and I have a bit of a kinship, a respectful bond. Dan wiped his eyes. Anyway, the longest they've ever stayed around for me was 26 days. Usually, it's more like 12 to 15, and then they disappear. But while they're here, there ain't no damn thing you can do about it. However, listen real close now, son. If they get in your house, they can hurt you, and they can hurt Sasha. They want inside badly, and they'll get hell-bent on getting in, and there's only one surefire way to keep them out of the house, and that's the candles. Dan then pulled out a 6-pack of tool table candles from his jacket and handed them to me. Any candle will do, but get the slowest burning kind you can, like those to be safe. And see, while they're here, you need to keep one candle for each person you killed burning, from last light to first light. If you killed 4 men, that means 4 candles need to be burning inside your home all night long, and that keeps them out. Dogs help too. I'm glad to see you've got one. They seem scared of dogs, so make sure Dash sleeps inside all winter long. That's about the thick and thin of it. But it's hard, son. It's hard on you. Those days from when they arrive until they leave, well, it'll test your sanity. And it'll test Sasha's too. She can't see him, but to her and to Lucy, it's like having a pack of ghosts around. But so long as you keep them out of the house and you can handle their presence, it'll pass. You understand? I was visibly shaking my head in disbelief at this point, entirely unsure of how to even respond to such profound nonsense. He started to speak, but I cut him off. Dan! Sorry, man, look. You have to excuse me. I'd like to check on Sasha and Luce. I just want to. Dan returned the favor and cut me off. Boy, I told you, Luce is telling Sasha the same things I'm telling you. You will have all the time you want to talk over. Look. Dan pointed behind me, down near the creek where Sasha was sitting with Lucy on a log facing the house, with Dash playing around in the water nearby. I stood up and walked to the porch railing to get a look at them. They were a good distance away, but I could see Sasha look scared. And when Sasha feels scared, I feel violent. Always been that way. I could feel the adrenaline surge in my hands and face. And this fuckery was 100% over. I wheeled around about to light into Dan and kick him off my land, but he had closed the distance between us and was already standing no more than 10 inches from my face, and with a hard look in his eye. A look I'd seen in men before, but hadn't for a while. Look here, shit kicker. I'm not pulling your chain. What I'm telling you is real. You have a new enemy, Marine. Do you understand? An enemy that I'm teaching you how to fight. You can disregard everything I'm telling you, but I will not watch you two get hurt without at least trying to help you by sharing this. From one grunt to another, sit down, shut up, and listen. Please, son. I let out a deep breath and took another one in. What the fuck? This was so fucking strange. Whatever, let the old man finish his spiel. Alright, Dan, anything else? He took a step back and put his hand on my shoulder and levelled his gaze. You seem like a good man, and Sasha a good woman. I want you two to stay safe here. The spirit is part of living here. It ain't all that bad once you get the hang of the routines, but it can be dangerous. You can't let your guard down. I know any sane person wouldn't believe this right away, but as soon as you plant roots here, as soon as you make and feel this place is your home, these things will start. I reckon you'll see the light in the pond within 2 or 3 weeks. I need you to do what I say, alright? You do not want to test this. I saw Dash run up into the yard, looked over and saw Sasha and Lucy walking up towards the house, arm in arm again, and Dan went on. Look at me, son. I ain't crazy. Lucy ain't crazy. What we're telling you is real. We have to stick together up here, alright? You will know this is all real sooner than later. I just don't want you to learn it the hard way. You need to trust us. When that light comes for the first time, start a fire and call us, and we'll come on over. And if you don't start the fire after seeing the light, and start to hear drums coming from that mountain, get Sasha in the truck and leave as fast as you possibly can. You hear me? Lucy and Sasha reached the porch. And Sasha looked at me with bewilderment and disbelief in her eyes, and Lucy took her arm from Sasha's and walked up to me and took both my hands in hers. I sure hope Dan wasn't too stern in his delivery, but everything he said to you, and she looked over at Sasha, and everything I said to you is unfortunately true. Do exactly as what is instructed. It's all written down. Please, call us. We'll be coming by to check in regularly, if that's all right. It was much harder to push back against Lucy. She seemed so strong and sweet, but I wanted them gone. That's fine, Lucy. It was nice meeting you both today. We really appreciate all the input, but Sasha and I need to put our heads together for a bit, and so we'll see you guys soon. And with that, they left. Before leaving, they left a stack of firewood, some matches, a bag full of candles next to the garage. And Sasha and I sat on the porch and ran through everything they'd told us. It seems Lucy and Dan really did tell the same things, and it was all in the notes that they'd left us as well. And Sasha is a hippie, very earthy and into Eastern medicine, often smitten with the energies in places and things. She's not some damn Wiccan priestess or something, but she's pretty much on board with all this shit right off the bat. I wasn't. We finished a bottle of wine and I was opening another. Babe, honestly, don't they seem like they're full-on fucking psychos? Do they seem mentally disturbed? Why on earth would they come on over and tell us all about that and permanently establish themselves as nut jobs as soon as they met their new neighbours, if they didn't feel it was important to do that? Sash, I don't know. Maybe they don't want neighbours here and are trying to scare us off. Maybe they're part of some weird cult. Rural Idaho is known for those. And Sasha shook her head. Harry, they're really normal people, and our realtor said they're highly respected in the community. Your boss even said he knows Dan and spoke highly of him. And that was true. My boss was a real down-to-earth dude and a real viper when it came to judging characters, not to mention well-educated and having lived all over the world. I guess if Dan was a psycho-cultist, it would be very surprising for someone like my boss to sing his praises. And at the end of the day, I like Dan, and Lucy too. Until they started their little spirit spiel. I don't know, Sash. I mean, I guess we wait for this goddamn springtime water light. Even if it is some battery-powered LED light Dan's gonna throw into the pond while we're at work. We both laughed. We agreed to leave it. I mean, we weren't gonna up and move, and if Dan and Lucy were full of shit, which they very likely were, who cares if we have crazy neighbours? We ate some leftovers and then went to bed. I caught Sasha staring down at the pond every time she was near a window. The next morning I went to work and we had a normal work week. And that next Saturday, we got more done around the yard and gardens and finished hanging out all of our art. It really was starting to feel like home. Saturday evening rolled around and Sash had plans to go get dinner in town with some friends from Jackson who were staying with family in the area. I grilled up some steak and asparagus. After dinner, I was sitting on the floor of the porch, drinking a beer and pulling burrs out of Dash's tail. Fucking things are a real hassle. I lifted my beer to take a slug and something caught my eye from the meadow. A yellowish ball of light in the pond, about 3-4 feet under the water. I'd be a lying son of a bitch if I said my heart didn't flutter and adrenaline didn't start to surge. I stood up and walked over to the railing. Dash looked up at me and followed my gaze and shot up to join me in staring out over the meadow. Fuck me sideways. There it is. I thought about taking a picture and sending it to Sash, but I didn't want to tweak her out. I then thought maybe I should try and shoot it. I had my .308 rifle with an eye scope freshly dialed in the coat closet. It wasn't more than 120 yards away, an easy shot. Maybe I'll blast the fucking thing and see what happens. And then I felt something. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt like I was being watched from the tree line above the house. I turned and looked up there, and Dash felt it too. He lowered his head and his hackles went up, and I could hear him let out a low growl. I looked back at the light and it had moved. It had moved positions by at least 8 to 10 feet. And we'll update more soon. Wow. Absolutely awesome start to an incredible series by the wonderful VatoCabron. Thank you ever so much, buddy, for allowing me to narrate your incredible work, and I do hope you enjoyed my rendition. Lots more to come from this wonderful series, but lots of mysterious and paranormal activities going on that wilderness-like ranch. As ever though, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help with the channel and our community further. And of course, why not hashtag TeamFEAR. As ever, I hope you're all keeping busy and positive as can be. And above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.